Let's get to some breaking news that is still unfolding. The Trump Justice Department has just uploaded new FBI documents missing from the initial releases of the Epstein files. Right now, MS Now is pouring through these new files. We are taking our time to make sure we get it right, and we want to be careful on what we report on air. Here is what we can tell you right now. 3 of these documents are FBI 302 memos, notes that FBI agents used to summarize witness interviews. These notes contain unsubstantiated sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump. Specifically, they detail an unsubstantiated account of a woman who accused Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein of sexually assaulting her decades earlier when she was just a teenager. One of the new documents reads in part, quote, "Redacted was asked whether she felt comfortable detailing her contacts with Trump. Redacted again asked what the point would be of providing the information at this point in her life when there was a strong possibility nothing could be done about it." There are many redactions on these forms. Trump has long denied any wrongdoing connected to Jeffrey Epstein. To discuss, let's bring in MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin.
Lisa, again, I want to just reiterate what Alicia just said for our viewers is we are definitely combing through all of these because these are the 302s, these forms, these FBI interview intake forms were the thing that, as we have interviewed survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's abuse over the course of the last couple of months, the things that they themselves most wanted to see in the files. And so the fact that today we've gotten at least 2 of these, by my count, you may have more, I think it's important, and it is important that we get this right. Talk to us. There's a lot in here. Anybody that has had a chance to take a look at these, they talk a little bit about blackmail. They talk about an intimidation campaign. Obviously, those allegations against then citizen Donald Trump. Walk us through how we should be looking through all this.
So, Simone, we have already seen an initial interview with this same alleged victim and accuser of both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein in the files. We knew that there were 3 others. In fact, MS Now joined NPR and an independent journalist, Roger Sullenberger, in reporting on how we figured out that those documents were, in fact, missing from prior production. So the first thing I want to say is that we now know that these, in fact, existed, that they were in the Department of Justice's possession, and that their claims that these documents were duplicates is just not credible because in reading them, they don't sound like any document that any lawyer considers a duplicate. A duplicate is usually an email exchange or a text exchange where you produce one portion of it and then maybe you later see a longer portion of it. That is not what this is. What these are 3 additional Form 302s reflecting 3 additional interviews of this same woman, culminating in an October 2019 interview where, as Alicia just said, she tells the FBI that she is aware that because of when she alleges her abuse occurred, and specifically because it was in the 1980s, and we're now talking to her in 2019, she tells the agents that she's aware the statutes of limitation of any viable federal violation may have run. She asks the agents, what's the point? And I think the agent's response here is just as interesting as some of her allegations, as salacious as they are and as unverifiable and unverified as they are, because the agent says all victims of crime should have the opportunity to tell their story, and they wanted to give her that opportunity if she wanted to, and she just didn't take it. To me, this is significant because we knew that this woman had allegations about Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, who she says she met when she was a teenager, and that both of them sexually abused her. What we didn't know is how it ended. And now we're seeing that the way that it likely ended is that the woman refused to cooperate with federal law enforcement authorities. She said that she understood that Trump was the president. She had contact with him when she was a minor, and when she was asked if she was comfortable detailing it, she just again reiterated, what would be the point of providing this information at this point in my life when there was a strong possibility nothing could be done about it? That's at that point in the interview, the agents, and I'm reading from this 302, or rather I'm trying to characterize it, basically said, go home. Take an opportunity to think about it. We're here if you want us to be. And it doesn't appear that the woman ever availed herself of that opportunity. Instead, 2 weeks later, as we know from documents that are already in the files, one of her lawyers contacted the FBI and said, basically, from now forward, your communications with this alleged victim, they go through us.
You know, Lisa, just listening to you describe and share that aspect of it, you can feel the frustration of the victim there. You can feel the anxiety, and it really, for me, y'all have heard me press this around this table, and certainly our audience has, about the redactions and the importance of exposing who these men are. You already referenced, Alicia did as well in the intro, about how heavily redacted these documents are. Not just the documents that we've already seen, but these 302s in particular. Talk a little bit more about the redaction. Is there anything that can be done about the redaction? Because I firmly believe the moment you can pull back the cover on a name and expose it fully, you have vindicated these women. And that frustration that I felt when you were reading what she said to that agent can be addressed.
Michael, it's a really, really tricky thing, right? Because I agree with you. I talk to a lot of these survivors, including survivors for whom 302s are already in the files. And when I speak to them, I often learn things that you can't see in these produced 302s because of how heavy the redactions are. I'm thinking about someone I even spoke to earlier today. At the same time, there are members of Congress who obviously we know have access to see these files. They can see what we cannot. And yet, we know from the experiences of certain members that when they try to put those names in the public domain, oftentimes they're not the people that they think they are. They make assertions about who they believe these people to be, and then find out, lo and behold, they are not those folks at all. It's somewhat of a dangerous game that we are all playing here. And the only people that are able to see these documents in their fully unredacted form either work at the Department of Justice or they are elected as members of the House of Representatives in the United States Senate. And that is the unfortunate reality in which all of us, including and most importantly, the survivors, are living right now.
This comes as just yesterday, the House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Pam Bondi in this probe. What do you make of the timing of this release?
I think that this release has a lot to do with that response. There was some reporting last week in both The Guardian and in Breitbart discrediting this particular accuser, quoting from the same 302s that had been produced. And of course, people like me were wondering, how did they possibly see those? So the fact that they are in the public domain right now, I think, is an effort to quell some of the loud shouting that folks have done about our reporting and others, identifying these as documents that are missing from the production. And all I'll say about that is these may be the most salacious missing documents from the production, but they are hardly the only one. The Department of Justice has left behind indices of prior witness statements for more than 500 people, almost 600 people. And if you look at those indices carefully and you sort of reverse engineer it, you can see all sorts of instances where people whose names are known and people whose names are not known have prior statements in the form of 302s or handwritten notes that are missing from the files. Some of those people have also made allegations, Alicia, against other prominent people in American life. They may not have ever been elected president, but they are people that the committee might be interested in. They're certainly people for whom the survivor community is interested in seeing some accountability. I would like the Department of Justice to take seriously the possibility that their production was under-inclusive and non-compliant with the law.
Yeah.
There you go.
To say the least. They broke the law, I would argue. Also, I mean, Howard Lutnick is now going to testify on the Epstein files. Just from Axios. This is what Lutnick told Axios. I look forward to appearing before the committee. I've done nothing wrong, and I want to set the record straight. It's worth mentioning that the reason Howard Lutnick has to be subpoenaed and before the committee is in fact because he went on a podcast and told what we now found out to be a lie about his association or the lack thereof with Jeffrey Epstein.
Done nothing wrong. You don't need a subpoena.
Come
you
on
just
now.
show up.